Before I break down every single thing that I have to say today, I need to give some warnings. One, if there's any lagging to begin the live show, I promise it'll go away 3 to 4 minutes into the live stream. To all of our replay viewers, I promise it'll be okay. Just stick through it, and thank you so much for your patience. Secondly, if you're a little one watching this, please make sure you have your earmuffs on because there will be profanity said in this post-game show. I'm giving everyone warnings now. They know exactly what is going to be happening here in the next couple seconds as I break down every single Mets game throughout the course of the regular season, postseason play included. But playoffs? You want to talk about playoffs? This New York Mets team, after securing a massive series victory that we just saw against the Texas Rangers, a huge series victory, did the exact same thing they did 2.5 weeks ago when they swept the Philadelphia Phillies at home. They went on and they lost a series to the Miami Marlins. Fast forward all these weeks later, the Mets faced the 30 games below 500 Washington Nationals, and the Mets put up 2 effing runs on the Nationals today after losing yesterday where they didn't have the offense. Sean Manaea, who should have never started this ball game, Carlos Mendoza really said to himself, let's go ahead and start the guy that's been batting practice all season long. The only time he's had success has been as a multi-inning reliever going back to the Royals series in the end of the first half of the season, as well as what we saw a week ago. And even then, Carlos Mendoza really said to himself, let's start Sean Manaea today. Surely the Washington Nationals can't hit him. I understand Manaea's at fault, but at the same time, if every fan in attendance today could say to you that it was a wrong decision to start Manaea, why not start Clay Holmes, when in reality, if you do somehow, some way make postseason play this year, the rightful argument is you're not going to have Manaea starting. You're likely going to have him in as a reliever. Why deviate away from the final semblance of success you had from him? Instead, as a surprise to absolutely nobody, it comes back to bite. The Nationals hit a 2-run tank. They're 3 runs up in the first 2 effing innings against this Mets team. And here's the problem, everybody. The Mets on a Sunday, on a day game where it dictates the series, they have been horrendous for the vast majority of the season. What makes you think these bats are now just suddenly going to wake up now that they have found themselves in a 3-run effing hole to begin the ball game? That is just one gripe out of this loss today. The big gripe is that in the potential final game of Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, and Edwin Diaz's tenure as New York Mets at Citi Field, we see them put up this. This is what we get. A Mets team that, as of now, at the time of us talking, have a half-game lead up on the Cincinnati Reds. But the reason why the title of the live show is that the Mets have lost their playoff spot is because, barring a comeback in the next 6 outs by the Chicago Cubs, the Reds will have the tiebreaker on the Mets, and they will be officially leapfrogging them for first in that 3rd wild card spot. The Mets have lost their playoff spot, and they have no one else but themselves to blame. A Mets team that went into Cincinnati a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and lost that series. A Mets team that has been absolutely down horrendous in more ways than one on the consistency front since early June this season. No one should be surprised in how we got here, but this is the reality. The New York Mets, in what was a do-or-die series for them at home against a 30-game below 500 club, and the Washington Nationals, proved to us yet again why this team has given us zero reason whatsoever to believe that they are going to do anything magical. The Mets are 0-67 this season. 0-67 after trailing beyond the 8th inning. How many of those games have they lost by 1 run? More than I wish I could possibly comprehend and tell you right now, because if I told you the exact statistic, you'd want only not to throw up, but you would want to jump off something. You would want to do some heinous things on the reality that in 1-run ball games, a statistic that the Mets have been superior on in years past, have been nothing short of putrid. There is no clutch gene. There is no backbone. There is no identity that we have said time and time again with this Metropolitan club. And now I sit here today breaking down in our latest Mets post-game show presented by our amazing sponsor at SeatGeek. Utilize your promo code for WardyNYM. That will you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase. Link down below, everybody. But you can't attend any more games at Citi Field. The Mets Fans, you Mets fans, all you guys watching this, help set a Citi Field record for the most ever people attending a Citi Field throughout the course of the season at over 3 million attendees. Even with over 3 million people attending Citi Field this year, and a year where Steve Cohen warrants you gotta show up to the ballpark, and even while, yes, the Mets haven't had a bad record at home this year, the point stands. In a year where everybody and their mother bends over backward to spend hundreds of dollars to attend these Mets games, the Mets have had such a lackadaisical season. They have had nothing to warrant why you should go out your way as a fan to attend these games, let alone sitting at home and spending not only your key precious time throughout your day just for this to be the result. This, my friends, is the New York Mets, and this is exactly why they find themselves out of a playoff spot. They are no longer in control of their playoff destiny with just 6 games left this season. And the worst part of it all, as much as I hate to say this, and I need to reiterate this constantly, I cannot emphasize this enough. I need you guys to listen. I am not someone who enjoys being this way. I hate the fact that the Mets have brought the absolute worst out of me for the vast majority of the season as a fan. I also know that the Mets have brought the worst out of me because they brought the worst out of themselves. They have been horrendous for so long, and just when you say to yourself, okay, so you're still telling me there's a chance, right? There's still a chance to make postseason play. You're right. There is still a chance. There's still a reality where that's possible. But the problem with that now is that the Mets have to conclude their season on a 6-game road trip. What's the Mets record on the road, you might wonder? 10 games below 500. They have been horrendous on the road all season long. And now we're supposed to say and think to ourselves, they're going to get it figured out. They're going to get everything balanced, and everything's going to be happy-go-lucky okay come postseason play. I've yet to get myself there. I've yet for you guys to tell me that we should be locked in with our confidence. Everything that we see is a reality. It's more of the same. Jacob Young, Harry Houdini, and the outfield single-handedly won this ball game for the Washington Nationals there on the defensive front. He is a man that I wish terrible things on because I'm so pissed off. Not on a person level, but on a player level. He bobbled and juggled a baseball as if you literally saw a magician, not named El Mago, in center, and he makes a great catch. And then in the 9th inning, Francisco Alvarez has a scorching liner of a home run, and it is robbed by Jacob Young. A 1-run ball game where all the Mets needed was to, at minimum, rally like they did in the 9th inning yesterday, and still lost in extra innings that we saw. Couldn't even muster to do that. Now this New York Mets team looks down the barrel that is a 6-game gauntlet in Chicago and Miami, and miss me with the nonsense that, oh, you're playing the Miami Marlins for your final series of the year. You should be happy about that. Why should I be happy about that? Tell me why. Please enlighten me as a fan why I should be happy about that. There's no reason to be happy about that when the Mets have been as horrendous as they have been against teams below 500 all year long. They're right around a 500 record against teams below 500 this year, at best. And then you bear in mind how bad they've been on the road. This all cultivates to a great frustration. That is me as we have to break down this Mets game. And when I say breakdown, we're not doing this pitch by pitch. You see the score there. There wasn't a lot to love in this one. This is a summary. Ready, class? All right, let's do it together. The ball game begins with Sean Manaea again becoming a problem. Right away, we would see Manaea somehow, some way get out of a mess thanks to a double play in the first. In the bottom of the first, the Mets don't do anything after Soto gets on with a walk, and then we would see Soto picked off there trying to steal second base. Nimmo gets on with a single, but it doesn't matter. The next half inning, Jorge Alfaro with a double makes it a 1-0 Washington Nationals lead as Lyle comes in to score, the fastest man alive who had an inside the park home run yesterday at Citi Field. He makes it quickly 1-0. Then we see it's 3-0 because Nasim Nunez, who looks like he's never hit a professional home run in his life, just smacked his 3rd home run of the year off, yes, you guessed it, Sean Manaea. And this is where I have a great criticism because I had some good, healthy back and forths with people on X. Juliet, thank you so much for the donation. Others, I'll get to them in a second. And I want to relay this back and forth because I think it's important. I tweeted out right away as soon as that bomb was hit, wow, color me shocked. Sean Manaea, who's been batting practice all year as a starter, can't get the job done again. It's almost like every fan and their mother figured this, but the Mets manager themselves. I get a proper rebuttal by my guy Kevin, a longtime follower of mine. Shout out to you, Kevin. Kevin states the following. So when he came in later and gave up a gopher ball homer to someone, it would be fine. He's just bad this season. One successful relief appearance doesn't change that, because my reply was, we've seen this every single start with him. It would have been great if the manager had a feel heading in this one the way that every other fan on the planet certainly did. And then he goes on to reply, so we're talking about a sample size of around 8 innings or so for Sean Manaea's relief outings that he's had this year. When I say relief, I'm not just talking about what Manaea did last week for the Mets. We're also talking about what he did for Clay Holmes in that Kansas City Royals series in Kansas City at the end of the first half this year before the All-Star break. I remember it like it was yesterday. And even then, even with that sample size, would I take that over a starter that's given us some solid 3 or first 4 innings? Yes, I would, Kevin, and here is why. We cannot look at Sean Manaea as a starter option. How can you feasibly head into the final week of the season just 1 game up on the final wild card spot over the Cincinnati Reds? Just 1 effing game up, and you really mean to tell me that's in the best interest of this Mets squad to deviate away from the one semblance of success that you had with Sean Manaea this year? Nothing's went right with Sean. He's been dog water all season long. It's because he didn't have a spring training after the oblique injury. It's because he has a loose body in his elbow that needs surgery at the end of the season. He just got off the paternity list, as I'm sure he was busy being a father the past 48 to 72 hours. Rightful reasons as to why he has not been good. And yet, even with all the rightful reasons, you finally say to yourself, oh, a piggyback circumstance actually looked like it worked. Who would have thought? It's almost like I've been saying to do this exact thing the past 2 effing months. Then we come to find out, let's go ahead and flip-flop the piggyback. Because you know what's smarter than anything else? Taking Clay Holmes out of a starter role that he's been in all season long. I get it, Clay's known as a reliever during his time with the Yankees. I also don't care, because Sean Manaea is more familiar with this kind of role than anyone else. He's able to adjust to this role than anyone else, because Clay Holmes is a guy that usually is kind of your one and done reliever when he was a reliever during his time with the Yankees. He stretched as a starter with the Mets. We know Holmes isn't great, but we know he isn't terrible either. Just have him in there. You know what to expect. He's a 5-and-dive starter. He's probably going to be solid for you across 4 or 5 innings, and then that's that. Then you need someone to come in and eat the remainder of that length to help lessen the bullpen workload. That's why Sean Manaea was so brilliant last week, and maybe he wouldn't have looked good today, but we will never know now. And the problem is that the Mets have had such little success in the second half that the one single thing that they could have leaned on heading into this matchup, they decided not to do. They focused more on the effing splits for the Washington Nationals against lefty pitchers, as if the Nationals aren't 30 games below 500. Buddy, I don't care if you're throwing right-handed, left-handed, or if you're ambidextrous. You're playing the 30 game below 500 Washington Nationals. That is all you need to know. You got to get the job done. Manaea couldn't get the job done, and I'm pissed off about him with that, but I also know that we've seen this with Manaea all year long, so it shouldn't matter the opponent. And anyone with common sense who's actually watched the season all year round will tell you and understand and can comprehend why this was not a good decision by Carlos Mendoza. Now, as I say this, is Mendy the sole reason why we lost today? No, of course he isn't. It comes down to this offense being incompetent for back-to-back days against the Washington Nationals. The Washington Nationals, they're at home at Citi Field. This is what the Mets have done all second half this year. There's no doubt about it. We have seen it with our very eyes. How many series have the Mets won brilliantly at home and then they lose at home against a lesser opponent? Why, you might ask? Because they play down to their opponents. This team does not know fundamental baseball against bad teams if it smacked them across the face. They have no clue what they're doing. And it's a continuation of what we saw today. An offense that went 1 for 6 or so with runners in scoring position. A Mark Vientos who gets ejected from this ball game halfway through. When you need Marky V in the lineup, it's Mark Vientos. He's such a pivotal piece of the puzzle for you and your offense. And I get it. Listen, I understand the frustration by Mark, but I would have liked if he was a little bit more composed there. I also would have liked if the first base ump that made that strike call when it was borderline, but I will give credit where credit's due. I slowed it down. I watched the replay. It did look like Vientos swung. It was very fast, so if you didn't break it down slowly and look at the frame by frame, you would say to yourself as a fan, oh, he didn't swing at all, because it was really, really close. But it's still a justifiable call for then this schmuck to get on his high horse to dictate the ball game, to throw out Vientos just for slamming his bat. Why are we such little wimps in today's game? My God, umpires, you have a players union union. You get hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year to make the wrong calls. And even then, you still can't get your panties out of the twist, which is the reality that maybe a player is going to be frustrated knowing that his team is in desperate need of winning, knowing his team is in desperate need of getting a clutch hit with runners on base, and he was not able to get the job done. Maybe he's pissed off in the moment, not just at the ump, but also on himself because of the fact that he put himself in that situation. But we're never going to know now unless we hear from Mark postgame, obviously, which we may get into a little bit later in the show here, because Vientos was ejected from the ball game. Another way that the schmucks you call umpires just have a grasp on the Mets and on MLB and dictate whatever the hell they want to say goes. It's disgusting, and I cannot wait for there to be some type of change there, starting with the ABS challenge system beginning next season, if not the year after, whatever the case may be. What you need to know, the biggest takeaways from this ball game, is that Sean Manaea, again, could not get the job done, couldn't get out of his own mess, as you all see there. 3 innings of 3 earned run baseball, 0 walks, 3 strikeouts. Dog water, he gets a 1 out of 10. I'm tired with Sean Manaea as a starter this year. My God, we've seen this all summer long, yet Carlos Mendoza confidently went into today suggesting that it would be different. Where is the feel by this manager? It is nowhere to be seen. We saw yesterday, I won't be a hypocrite, we saw it yesterday. He was fantastic. Pinch hitting Vientos for McNeil in the 8th inning, which tied the ball game thereafter. Pinch hitting Terens that we saw in the 9th inning there for Beatty, which got the leadoff runner on. Then pinch running him for Siri, which came in to tie the ball game in the 9th. All great things. And then Carlos Mendoza, who said post-game yesterday that Edwin Diaz was not available beyond 1 inning. Miss me with that BS. I'm sorry. It's nonsense. 7 pitches and your star closer can't go out one more day? What does Edwin Diaz do today, you might wonder? Yeah, he strikes out the effing side without a problem in the 9th inning. What very well could be his final ever outing as a New York Met at Citi Field. Has that at all been something that you guys have grasped yet? That's what makes this all the more frustrating as a fan. We don't know the future of Alonso. We certainly don't know the future of Diaz, because if Edwin opts out, you think David Stearns is going to give him a long-term contract as a reliever again? You think he's going to give him absurd high AV beyond 3-4 years? Yeah, I got a bridge to sell you, buddy. It ain't going to happen. This is not the Billy Epler ran Mets. This is the conservative David Stearns ran Mets that is not going to give it back to a reliever that isn't warranted of it, because as much as I love Edwin, this is true with Edwin Diaz. What have been his best 2 seasons as a Met, 2022, 2025? What do they have in common? Their walk years. Knowing he has an opt-out at the end of the season, knowing he's likely going to exercise that opt-out, in my humble opinion, and I will stand on this is one of the few times I'm actually not with the players, I think it is the biggest smack across Steve Cohen's face if Edwin Diaz opts out this season. He gave you the largest contract and literally Major League Baseball history for a reliever at over $100 million, and your little ass is going to say, I'm going to opt out and look for more money? How selfish can you be? I get it. It's a selfish game. This is how it goes. But at the same time, after what Edwin did, which was blowing his knee effing up that we saw in 2023 in the World Baseball Classic, for the Mets to take his injury in stride and take care of him completely out of Steve Cohen's pocket like the dog that he is, and this is how he's repaid. I'm sorry, I love Edwin, but I'm not losing sleep if the Mets lose Edwin Diaz after this season. I will lose sleep if he signs with the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Braves, a competitive team in the National League that I have to worry about. Otherwise, I ain't losing sleep over it, because that is as much of a smack across Steve Cohen's face as I've ever seen by a player. There's nothing to justify it. Miss me with the nonsense. Oh, it's his career. He's got to do what's best for him and his family. He already got a record-breaking contract. He already set the standard for relievers. I don't care. Needs to be better. That's disgusting. I will never be a pro Edwin Diaz if he opts out of that contract. I'll want him back, obviously, but I'm not expecting him to return unless he opts out just to take a couple-year-long deal around a similar AAV, maybe an additional 2-3 years that the Mets can agree upon. That's a different circumstance. Otherwise, it feels like it's going to smack Cohen across the face, barring changes. This is what you got from the pitching today. Clay Holmes came in and he shut the door down. Clay Holmes proved to you that he can handle a piggyback circumstance. The only positive to take away from that is that the Mets somehow, some way F around to make playoffs this year. Maybe, just maybe, they'll consider Clay Holmes in a piggyback, because we did get a little bit of an example as to why it could succeed. But here's the thing once more. Why not work with something that worked a week ago? if you're Carlos Mendoza, why wouldn't you consider keeping Sean in that role when we all know damn well you are not going to consider Manaea to start a playoff game for your life if they go beyond the wild card? If they do go beyond the wild card, and this is even if they make playoffs, which feels like a great stretch at this point with a week left to play, even if they go ahead and do that, do you really think in confidence that Sean Manaea can handle just a couple innings as a starter? I don't think he can handle it. How do you think he can handle it? Enlighten me. What has he done this season in a starter role that makes you think he can handle it? Yes, he got some solid first 3-4 innings of work that we saw from previous starts this year. But that all is fickle and means nothing at the end of the day when the results still haven't been there. Why? Because he still gets rocked before he exits the ball game. Why? Because Manaea has proven his ability to handle a reliever role. Mets starters heading to postseason play will be in piggyback format. You're going to have Noah McLean, Brandon Sproat, and potentially Jonathan. Yes, as crazy as it is to fathom, there is a great reality. The Mets' 3 starters in the wildcard series, should they be in there against those Dodgers, could all be rookie right-handers, with the exception of David Pearson. So having said that, you say to yourself, what is the best role for Sean Manaea in that instance? It sure as hell is not to be a starter, but does he make sense as a multi-inning reliever? Does he make sense to come in and then face the gauntlet of Ohtani, of Freeman, etc., when you're trying to emphasize those lefty-lefty matchups? It may very well make sense, because we have seen Sean have success against these guys in the past. It wouldn't be crazy to see it happen again in a reliever role. But that's the final thing I will say on the reliever front. Speaking of them, Brooks Raley, Gregory Soto, Edwin Diaz, they all did their part. They're far from the problem today. Juliet, thank you for the donation, the $5. Okay, so Manaea gave up 3 runs. Can't this team score 4 runs and then they don't deserve it? Julia, I completely hear you. Thank you so much for that donation. We're going to talk more on this offense. Because speaking of the offense, speaking of the devil, this is it. This is a Mets offense that had nothing to provide. They got robbed twice over by Jacob Young and the outfield, who not made one acrobatic catch that we saw, I believe, on Beatty, if I'm not mistaken, that literally he juggled the baseball, hit off his effing foot. You think the guy's getting ready for the World Cup. No, he's about to catch your ass out to get the final out of the inning. Then for him to get the catch on Francisco Alvarez, great catches by Young, tremendous defender, but I wish him nothing but the absolute worst, because I want to be happy as a Mets fan, and the Mets continue to do everything in their power to make me as miserable as I currently sit here talking to each and every one of you today. This is my problem. And a day where you need some semblance of offense against a lineup currently, the Washington Nationals, that had Jake effing Irvin as north of 6 ERA towing the rubber today. Yeah, Jake Irvin still goes roughly 6 innings of 2 earned run baseball for you. Then you see Parker coming. Parker with a north of a 6 ERA today. He also comes in and carves up the Mets 3.2 shutty without a problem. This is not only inexcusable, this is who they are. We know this is who they are. And this is a continuation of the New York Mets not being the baseball team that we need them to be. And the problem that I have, and I think you guys can agree, is time's up. We've waited long enough. We've called this out long enough. This is who they are. They have a week left of the regular season. Then they make postseason play. There's not a single one of you, to the thousands of watching live on a replay right now, that can say with a straight face they are confident with the Mets heading into postseason play. If you are, pass that here, because ask me some good, because otherwise, I don't know how you could be that delulu. Let's be honest here. This team, as much as I love them, as much as I love Steve Cohen, as much as I love aspects of David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza, has been a truly tremendous collapse that we've seen for the past 3 months. So this is not overly shocking, but my God, doesn't mean that it absolutely still stings. Because if we're watching, if we're committed, if we're locked in on a daily basis the way that I am, the way that you are, we're sickos. We're mentally unstable. We know this. We're Mets fans. If you're a Jets fan, you're really mentally unstable. Today was a terrible day for you. The only positive of winning that I have today to talk about that isn't any team regarding New York, because all the New York teams tend to lose nowadays, outside the Yankees, is my Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the only team I have that's winning right now. And they just won a game against the New England Patriots when they had 3 turnovers that they acquired and then scored 1 effing yard on thereafter. They did nothing with it. It wasn't for an A-Rod last-second TD with 2 minutes left of Calvin Austin in the corner to secure the dub. And any Jets fan, I apologize if you got offended by my Rodgers fandom. I didn't choose this life. I chose to be a sports fan. My father made me a Steelers fan at a young age. Why? Because the Jets and the Giants sucked in the 70s, and he said to himself, if I'm going to be a young fan of a football team, it's got to be a good one. He ain't going to pick the Cowboys, so he picked the Steelers. Rest is history. Getting off that tangent, the point stands. At least I got a little taste of winning today, but I didn't even watch the game. You want to know why I didn't watch the Steelers game today? You want to know why I didn't watch a single second of the game today for the most part, it's because I had to be stuck watching my Mets. And this is the kind of result we get. 15 minutes away from me, Coca-Cola Park, where the Syracuse Mets played their final game of the year. Tyrone Taylor's final game before he returns to the Mets this upcoming week on the road. He had an RBI single. I was there a couple days ago. No one hit for me when I was in attendance. Kodai Senga looked like shit. Now, since then, every top prospect has hit. Today, Carson Bench home run, Ryan Clifford home run, Jet Williams home run. Why do I emphasize these things, you might wonder, not just because they're great prospects? I emphasize them is because there were so many other different avenues that I could have had enjoyment today as a sports fan. And I chose not to because, God forbid, I have to sit here and talk about the Mets for a living. Here we are, everybody. Step right up and meet the effing Mets. All they do is tear your heart out, and every single time you want to be out, they pull you back in. It's the same Al Pacino line time and time again. And here we are talking 5:03 p.m. Eastern, September 21st, about how the New York Mets are pretty much out of a playoff spot. We're going to continue to break this down here in a second. I do have some comments I have to get into as well. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe on your way, and I really do appreciate that. Let me get my camera focused here as well. Just give me 1 second, everybody. All right, guys. Be right back. 1 second. Oh my God. Jack, we just don't deserve a spot anymore. We haven't deserved a playoff spot in months. This isn't just, oh, we don't deserve it now. We haven't all season long. The only reason why I want a playoff spot is for the same reason that you want a playoff spot, and that's to be proven wrong. You're a Mets fan. You want your team to make playoffs every year. But we talk about justification. Does this team have enough? Is the New York Mets a team that is worthy of making postseason play? No. There's nothing about this team since June that tells you that they're a team that's worthy of making postseason play. The only reason as to why they are at all of consideration in postseason play is because they are still handling the very little piece semblance that was the 21 game above 500 record that they had earlier this year. If it wasn't for that roaring hot start with their pitching far exceeding expectations, this team would be so down they would have been eliminated by postseason already. They would have been eliminated north of a month ago if that wasn't the case. So, if you're wondering, do the Mets deserve to make playoffs? No, they most certainly do not. If they do not make playoffs, no one should be surprised by it at this point. But do we want them to make playoffs? Yeah, I think everyone wants your team to make playoffs because, listen, the Mets can drag their feet all season long, and the crazy thing about the playoff format is that with that expanded wild card, you never know what can happen. You can have teams playing some of their worst baseball heading into postseason play, getting a crazy spark with a big home run or a big moment, and that's that. And speaking of that's that, everybody, you know how he said how the Mets have lost their playoff spot and how it wasn't official yet we were getting there? Yeah, it's official now. Take a look with me, everybody. It's not officially yet because they didn't label it, but the Reds did, in fact, just win their ball game against the Cubs. The Reds and the Mets are now officially 80-76 on the season. And I know that I think Cincinnati is spelled wrong there. If it is, I apologize. That's an automated graphic. That's beyond me. I don't control that. I just plug and place. That's it. But the Reds now are going to be tied with the Mets, which means that they have the tiebreaker. So, as we currently speak here now, 5:06 p.m. Eastern, the Mets are officially out of a playoff spot. That is the reality. Justin with the $5 holla. Thank you so much, Justin. Another fitting end to a tedious, putrid, slow-motion car wreck of a season. Last year was an abbreviation. This core stinks. The core has been a massive part of the problem. But you want to know who hasn't been a part of the problem? It's Juan Soto. And a year where everything has went wrong for this Mets team, I still get schmucks in my comments saying that Juan Soto's a problem. I'm sorry. Outside the fact that the Mets have had a really frustrating season, you cannot sit here confidently and tell me that Juan Soto's part of the problem. Was he part of the problem yesterday? Absolutely, he was part of the problem yesterday. No doubt about it. And of course, the Reds secured a 4-game effing sweep on the Chicago Cubs and watched the Mets lose 2 out of 3 in Chicago starting Tuesday. That's the luck we're going to have. The Cubs are completely free-falling. The Reds are winning big time, and now the Mets have to play these same Cubs who just got curb stomped the past 4 games in Cincy. Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say I'm not instilled with confidence as a Mets fan. Who would have thought? But Juan Soto is quite literally having the best offensive season in New York Mets team history. That is not an understatement. I will repeat it again. Juan Soto is having the best statistical season in Mets history. There has not been a single batter in Mets franchise existence of over 60 effing years that has done what Juan Soto has done in his first year as a Met. He will finish the season over 40 home runs, north of 40 stolen bags, 100 plus RBIs, 100 plus walks, an OPS pushing north of 1,000. And even then, even with all those things going right, it still doesn't matter. This is the greatest example of why one player will never be what dictates a ball club. Yes, a player can have a heavy say and a heavy impact because the Mets were so reliant on Lindor and his success last year to be their captain, to be their MVP all summer long. That is true. But at the same time, this goes to show, moving forward, as we get into the offseason, as we get into what Steve Cohen and David Stearns have to do to change the philosophy and change the structure of this roster, one thing can be learned here is as great as Juan Soto is, that is only going to move the needle so much. How much worse of a team would the Mets have been without Juan Soto? They would probably be, knowing they're just 4 games above 500, and knowing that Juan Soto is currently right around a 6-4 player this year, they would be below 500 without Juan Soto. Okay, bearing that in mind, remember this, as we move into the offseasons when we make player acquisitions, you do not need to necessarily have the guy with the big bucks in order to get the big wins. Because even while having the big bucks guy, the largest contract in North American sports history, the Mets are well on their way now to potentially not even making postseason play. And the Mets are well on their way currently at the time of us talking right now, because we know baseball's fickle. Things can change in the next 40 to 72 hours. We all know this. But as of now, this is a Mets team that has continued the trend of what we have seen under Steve Cohen. It is up, down, up, down, up, down. Year 1, 2021, terrible roster construction. Zach Scott's your GM. You know you're doomed from the start, and the Mets don't make playoffs. They're buying at the deadline. Javi Baez, Lindor, thumbs down, that's that. They got nothing else cooking. 2022, they exceed expectations. They don't just have a good year, they have a great regular season, 101 wins, a lot of things to be happy about, but they fall short down the stretch in the clutch when they need to step up most. There's no clutch gene the way that they had it all summer long. 2023, the New York Mets with expectations can't meet them. Why is this important? Because the New York Mets had expectations to do more than just make playoffs in 2023. They had expectations to hopefully have a solid run, and they were sellers at the deadline. 2024, the expectation heading into the season was to just make playoffs. And what did they do? They did a fantastic thing, and after starting 11 games below 500, rallied all summer long and got 2 games shy of the NLCS when everyone else doubted them. 2025, a Mets team with the greatest expectation yet with Juan Soto. You just got 2 games shy of the dance. They expect you to at minimum get back there. And while they still may be able to get back there, we'll see. But I got to see it to believe it. Because what I do see is a commonality, a trend over these 5 years under Steve Cohen. And this is by no means a slight on Steve. I would like to reiterate this, everybody. So please do not take that as that. It's far from the truth. I love Steve Cohen. Without him, we wouldn't even have competitive baseball right now. We would not be following a team that would be at least decent and have somewhat expectation. We would be following the miserable Mets that are expected to have another 70-win season if Steve Cohen was not owner. I feel very firm in saying that. But both things can be true at the same time. Steve has invested millions upon billions into this organization over the past 5 years, and he has gotten jack shit in return. And a year where the fans finally decide to show up at Citi Field. They have the largest attendance ever at Citi Field across the regular season span. And the fans, what do we get? We get a steaming pile of dog crap that you call the New York Mets in 2025. What needs to be had? What needs to change? This is not just a philosophy change. This is a true core change. And why I emphasize the potential final at-bats of Alonso, McNeil, and the final pitching of Edwin Diaz at Citi Field is important, because this very well could have been the final moment we ever saw in Flushing, Queens, these players positively factoring in the team. Because if you think for a single second that the Mets are going to run it back with these guys, should things continue the way that they have for the next week, and if they do or don't make playoffs, if they make playoffs and get bounced in the wild card right away, or if they don't make playoffs, if either of those situations happen, you really think the Mets are going to run it back? There is not a chance in hell that happens. That'll likely be the demise of Pete Alonso's tenure as a New York Met. That'll likely be the demise of Jeff McNeil's tenure as a New York Met. That'll probably be the demise of Edwin Diaz as well, to a good degree, among others. The Mets are going to blow this shit up. And if you think they won't, I got a bridge to sell you. Because they have a lot of amazing top top prospects on the pitching end and on the offensive end to build within. And I think it goes without saying, if this Mets team at all can get to where we want them to be, it's going to be backed by what they do within the organization, within the team promotions for pitchers, within the promotions for batters. They need to properly develop these guys through and through to have good organizational understanding and philosophy, because without that, we have an organization, a club right now that has no identity, that has no clue where to turn, and every single time they're making 2 steps forward, they're making 10 steps back. As much as I love a lot of these guys on this team, you know what I love most personally? It's winning ball games. It's why I've committed to this as my full-time job for the past 5 years as a diehard fan that literally covers the New York Mets for a living. It's why, even before that, I was a sicko and didn't cover them for a living, but I acted like I did because I watched every single game. I would listen to every podcast of others. I would watch and read reviews I would do everything regarding the team to be immersed and surrounded by them, even when they would lose. It is time for this team to give us a valid reasoning to stick around. And a valid reason to stick around is to make proper organizational change. What that is going to be as we head the offseason has yet to be seen. But what I'm here to tell you, everybody, is that should this trend continue the way that it has all summer long, heading into postseason play, there is not a chance in hell this core group is the same next season. If it is, I might just go on strike and not cover them for a year, because what's the point? You're probably going to get the same result. Justin, thank you for the donation. Really appreciate that. Going up the list here. I know we got donations. If I miss anyone's donations, please do not take it personal. I sincerely apologize. I've had a lot to say here. If you guys have a certain comment that you really want me to answer that I missed your donation on, please reiterate it in the chat right now. Say, hi, Wardy, I donated, and this is what I said. Please go ahead and do that now in the live chat so that way I can catch up to you guys. Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. David with the $5 holla says, this kind of failing is in the Mets DNA. It's in the chromosomes of this franchise. It's in the paint on the walls. We should all know better by now. That's the point. I've been telling you guys this verbatim for months on end, yet my dumbass, just like you guys fall in the same category too, we can all laugh at ourselves. If there's one positive as a Mets fan, you know, it's going to humble you quick. It's going to build character, as they say. And that most certainly has held true in my young lifetime as a Mets fan over the past decade plus, to the decades of fandom that you guys have, to the many of you guys watching live on a replay right now. The Mets DNA is a core problem. And that's where I don't know where the change is going to come from. It's solely by different player personnel. It's solely by different coaching personnel. These are things that we are most certainly going to need answers to sooner rather than later. When I say soon, I mean as soon as we get in that damn offseason, we're locking in. If there's any positive to take away about this circumstance, is that if the Mets really continue to get exposed the way that they did, okay, then you don't need to have as much emotional ties to these guys, because the emotions are backed by winning, right? When the Mets win, you're excited that the players did well. You're happy for Francisco Lindor. You're happy for Pete Alonso. You're happy for Brandon Nimmo. You're happy for Juan Soto, everyone else and their mother. But when the Mets lose, had the 4th worst record in baseball since mid-June, over 80 games, a half-season sample size, most fans don't really give a shit about that roster construction anymore. What they care about is winning, and what they care about is putting the right people in that position to do so. So as we await the next week worth of baseball, start to ponder this, Mets fans, if you haven't went out your way to do so already. Think about what you think is really best for this organization moving forward. Is it the guys that have been here that have provided no success, just some fun in-season moments? Is it the guys that have not been here yet that you're eyeing come the offseason? As a different coaching staff personnel. You know David Stearns ain't going anywhere, so don't even bother to bark up the tree on changing Pobo. But should the Mets consider a GM, like what they initially intended with Billy Epler before supposedly, I say supposedly for a reason, Buck Showalter ratted Billy's ass out and said he's been doing the the Phantom IL situation. Whatever the case may be, we need change. The same way that Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes are not going to both be back here as hitting coaches next season. That's a fact. I don't know if they know it yet, but I'm going to enlighten them, remind them that buckle up. You're not going to be here next season. I promise you're not going to be here. If you are, then I will not only apologize, but I will go out of my way for an entire live show to kiss Eric Chavez's ass by telling him how great of a hitting coach he is, even though all the stats will go on to tell you that that most certainly isn't the case. The Mets without Juan Soto this year are putrid. Putrid. Pete Alonso has over 100 RBIs, and who gives a shit? No one, right? No one. Francisco Lindor is on pace for another 30 home run, north of 100 RBI season, more in the 90 RBI range. How many of you guys care? Genuinely. We don't care about the moral victories anymore. The same way that Jets fans, and I know my Jets fans feel this plenty, do not give a rat's you-know-what about, oh, it was a tight ball game. We only lost by 1 touchdown or 1 field goal. We got to feel good about that. No! Jets fans have won through them their entire life. They just want wins. They don't care who helps them get there. They just want to win. The same applies to New York Mets fandom. They've existed since the early 1960s, and they have 2 championships to show. They haven't sniffed anything since 86. They haven't sniffed a dance in a decade. Thank you for the donation, David. Sean, I was at the game. I'm also a Jets fan. Worst day of my life. Sean, I'm going to go on a limb and tell you that this is not the worst day of your life. You've had worse sports fandom days if you're a Jets and Mets fan. I don't say that rudely. I say that confidently. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate that. Bro, wasted my whole Sunday. We are eliminated from playoffs. We're not eliminated from playoffs. That's where you're wrong. We aren't eliminated from playoffs. We're just out of a playoff spot. Because, as drumroll please, there it is finally. Why is this not updating? I don't understand why this hasn't updated yet. It will soon enough. The point is, the Reds have the tiebreaker on the Mets. They are officially in that playoff spot. I don't know why. It usually updates right away, but it's not doing it yet. Regardless, Reds are in postseason play. The Mets currently are not because of that tiebreaker. Keith with the $10 donation. Thank you so much, Keith. He says, the fact that one of the worst offenses and pitching staffs jumped out ahead every game and had us chasing unsuccessfully speaks volumes. Not hopeful moving forward. Very deflating. It's who we are. Exactly, Keith. And this is my point. This is a philosophy, right? This is an organizational issue. This is also a mentality issue. And if the players can't get their head out of their ass, it's next up on the coaches to do so. That's where it falls on Carlos Mendoza. That's where it falls on Eric Chavez on the heading especially. Now, Mendy has gotten a lot of flack this year. We know this. I personally have talked plenty crap on Mendoza this year. Having said that, do I think Carlos Mendoza is the main part of the problem? No. Do I think the Mets can succeed with Carlos Mendoza? Yes. The reason why I feel that way is because 2024 has something to say. It comes down to vibes. It comes down to in-game feel. And you know what? When you start winning consistently, as Mendoza will say himself, as the players will say themselves, it is contagious. And you know what also is true in that same breath? When you lose consecutively, when you have 3 separate 7-game losing streaks in the season, when you go on a 15 of 18 game stretch of losing baseball games in the first half, when you go 14 of 16 losing in the second half, usually this is what builds a bad mentality. And this is what brings the worst out of these people. You know, when you look at Carlos Mendoza, he's still a first-time manager in his second year as a manager. So it isn't overly shocking that in a year where his entire rotation has went to shambles because they can't pitch for shit, or they've been injury riddled all year, all backed by David Stearns' decisions for the most part. I know David can't control health, but he can control bringing in guys that are injury prone the way that he most certainly didn't control enough of. He's not in control of those outside factors. But when Mendoza sees a team that's been floundering as bad as they've been, and this is a stretch far greater than May last year of 11 games below 500, how is he going to be able to handle that? This says a lot about his character, but also just his ability to handle these adjustments. And we see Mendoza unable to handle a lot of these in-game adjustments. And yes, you can blame him because he's the manager. No doubt, he's making millions of dollars to make the right decisions, and he's making wrong ones more often than not, it feels lately. But at the same time, he's still just a second-year manager trying to deal with a Mets team that's had the most drastic splits that we've seen from a competitive baseball team in all of baseball this year. There is not a single competitive team this year pushing for playoffs that has more ebbs and flows and more downward spirals than what the Mets have done this season, which goes back to what we were saying earlier. Do the Mets deserve to make playoffs? No, they don't. But it's okay to say that and still want them to make playoffs. I want them to make playoffs. I want them to make playoffs for 3 big reasons. One, for everybody outside of me, you guys deserve to see your favorite team in postseason play. No one deserves it more than Mets fans. Secondly, I want to see them make postseason play because I too am a Mets fan. I want to see them go on a run. I want to see them prove me wrong. And thirdly, I cover them for a living. So not only has it been a drag to cover this shit show you call summer for the Mets, but as soon as this ends, I got to lock in and get everything prepped with off-season content moving forward. And it's such a blessing and a curse because while I enjoy it, I absolutely hate it when it happens prematurely versus what you were hoping to see. If the Mets really do come to an end with their year a week from now and they don't make playoffs, I'm going to be losing my mind in more ways than one. Because not only do I have to lock in and start to grind off-season content that I know a lot of you guys aren't going to give a shit about until the World Series is over. So it's a month-long span of uncertainty when it comes to how content will perform because the fans will have a lack of interest. That's a fact. In case you guys want to know how these things go with someone like myself, I have to map things out well in advance all throughout the year for any type of situation. And as I've done over the past 2 weeks getting set, the Mets don't make playoffs. They do make playoffs. I have to be locked in because I want to cover them. I love covering this team when they're in postseason play. Last year was my first taste of covering the Mets in postseason play, and we got 2 games shy of the World Series. I had an effing blast. I was like a kid in a candy shop. I was voice cracking, voice screaming like a little girl that you guys saw with the Pete Alonso home run against the Brewers in Milwaukee. I was losing my effing mind when they took care of the Phillies with the grand slam by Lindor in Game 6. You know, I was there through it all, and I loved every aspect of it. And I'm dying to get those emotions again. Because all my emotions have been, like what many Mets fans, you guys watching live on replay can certainly relate with right now, has been despair, frustration, and disappointment. I need it to change. I need it for my own mental health, and I know that you guys likely need it for your own mental health too. And that's why I severely, and I cannot amplify this enough, I envy the fans that can watch every single season without having emotions when it's the right time to not have emotions. You know, for me personally, I can turn the switch off a lot. I can go through my moments of being like, all right, we've been there, we've done this. I've been numb all summer long. I don't know if you guys have noticed this because I rant a lot, but outside of my ranting, I've been numb. Every time I have conversations with my dad or my family or friends when talking about the Mets, I just say more of the same. Like, I'm not going to freak out to you about it because we expect this, but I'm going to freak out to you guys about this because you guys, to a degree, may have a different expectation. You could be the happy-go-lucky Mets fan that's always the internal optimist all year that wants things to be better, and yet you have to get a schmuck like me to give you a reality check. But I have to give you that reality check because you need to know it. You need to make sure you don't get more hurt than you've already been by this Mets team for however long you've been a fan of. Do you think there's some strife between Steve and David? I doubt it. To answer that question, I think if there's any animosity or any inconsistencies in the relationship between David Stearns and Steve Cohen, it's heavily backed by winning. Steve Cohen's a diehard fan through and through. If the Mets aren't winning, no shit, Steve isn't going to be happy. And no duh, he's probably not going to love what David's doing. He might not be happy with David making signings and they completely fall flat on their face. He might not be happy with David making trades or not making enough trades that comes back to bite the team. I'm not going to speak on their relationship because I genuinely do not know. But in response to your question, it's a fair one to have, but I do not know the answer to that right now. I'm going to assume that Steve Cohen is like any other fan and has his gripes with Stearns more performance-based than anything else. Because that holds true with us fans, right? Not a single fan complained about David Stearns entering this season. I'm going to be frank, you're an asshole if you call David Stearns anything other than a really good-looking first-year Pobo for the Mets. He just brought in Juan Soto, Steve Cohen backing and making sure that happened. He ran it back with a lot of guys we initially wanted him to run it back by heading into 2025. And this is the result. This is what it is. So where we blame Stearns is on not doing enough for the rotation after the injuries happened to Manaea and Montas in spring training. Not doing enough when the entire rotation went down with injury, felt like, in June, north of June. And you didn't call up the kids sooner. You didn't trade for veteran options that wouldn't have cost you an arm and a leg before the deadline. You did none of that. So the gripes with Stearns come more this year because last year, everything went right after a horrendous start to the season. Everything went right for this team. That's why even when the year ended in Game 6 against the Dodgers in the LCS, I was upset just because of how fun I was enjoying the run, but I wasn't upset about how the year ended per se. I was very grateful that we even got to that point. I told you guys here verbatim on the platform, not a single Mets fan can't be satisfied with how the year went, all things considered. If we're bearing in mind the initial expectation for how down they were to where they got, we're all happy. Now, this is a polar opposite of a season from that. This is a season that had you 21 games above 500, feeling good, feeling confident, feeling cocky, ready to talk shit on your Yankee fan and Philly friends there, saying, oh, we're going to be one of the best teams in baseball this year. You see that? That's going to be the norm for us. And in a year where it felt like it was finally the start of the Mets finding a consistent level of success, of at least being a team that you know more often than not is going to be a good team. You know, you're going to see ebbs and flows for sure, but they're going to be a good team. This team is so far from that. I cannot state it enough. JSD with a $5 holla. Thank you, Jay. He says, I think Reds will fold over against Milwaukee and Skeens. Realistically, how many of the games left do you think the Mets need to win? Truthfully, I think with the next 6 games the Mets have, the Mets at minimum have to win 4 of their next 6 games. At minimum. Bare minimum. They really need to win at minimum 5 of 6. But I'll go 4 of 6 because I think there's a world where they can make playoffs winning 4 of their next 6 games. But here's the thing. You see that number 4? When was the last time the Mets won 4 straight games in a row? It feels like it's been a hot minute. You want to know the last time the Cincinnati Reds won 4 games in a row? Yeah, that was today. That was today against the Chicago Cubs. The Reds may have just hurt the Mets in more ways than one. That's really pissing me off as I continue to think about it. Because they not only swept the Chicago Cubs and Cincy in a 4-game set, but now the Mets have to face a Cubs team that's pissed off with all the downward spiraling that they've had in the second half this year, right? All it takes is a series against the Mets to get your confidence up. We have seen this countless times with teams. And the Cubs have every reason in the world to wake up after being asleep the past weekend. Dylan, $2 holla. Thank you, Dylan. Fire Mendoza, please. I really appreciate the donation. I will be genuinely surprised if Carlos Mendoza is fired after this season. Even if they don't make playoffs, I will be surprised. Because if there's one thing that can be said about Carlos Mendoza, he's second-year manager. Enlighten me the last time that any Major League Baseball team had continued success and had deep playoff runs for more than just 1 year in a row with a manager that they just brought in. You know how hard that is to do? How hard that is to do. With the exception of Pat Murphy and the Brewers, because he was already there as a longtime coach prior to becoming their manager. He was internally in their organization for a long time, since the time David Stearns had hired him, or so, mind you. And no, that's not an exaggeration. This Mets team, how do you expect them to get better by firing a manager that a year ago got you 2 games shy of the World Series? It's hard to justify, because as frustrating as Carlos Mendoza has been with his in-game decision this year, I wholeheartedly believe, and I will stand on this. I will stand on this until Mendoza's either fired or we find out more clarity about the circumstance here. Carlos Mendoza will thrive with the Mets. He has not thrived this year because the Mets have not thrived at all. I think we're witnessing in real time a first-time manager that has not been able to handle the adversities that come in a year that you do not get at all close to expectation with Juan Soto. And I'm not saying it's to justify his lack of performance as a manager. He makes millions of dollars. He needs to be better. There's no denying that. But the idea that the Mets will somehow be better with another manager when they've had how many managers under Steve Cohen? Yeah, Louis Rojas. Yeah, Buck Showalter. Yeah, Carlos Mendoza. Do you really think it's in the organization's best interest to now have a 4th manager in a 6-year span heading into 2026? And I'm going to answer that for you. No, it is not in the best interest of the organization. It has never been in the best interest of any organization that Major League Baseball has bestowed upon us since its conception, that we've seen inception, whatever you want to say, since the beginning of the 1900s. When was the last time that a team over that stretch of baseball was able to find consistency? The answer to that is none. So, no, that is my counter behind why you should not fire Carlos Mendoza. Even with the down year, maybe, just maybe, it's in the organization's best interest to actually give the guy another shot. I'm sorry, if Louis Rojas can get the opportunity to manage this team in 2021, then at minimum, Carlos Mendoza deserves another year with the New York Mets after what he did in 2024. That's how it is. That's how it is. And I will stand on that until we find out that Mendoza's fired. Then I'll say, okay, but I've got to be honest with you. I have concerns with how this is going to hurt the chemistry because a lot of the players love Carlos Mendoza. A lot of the players will go to bat for Mendoza. Yes, not every player loves him as much as others. And yes, there might be some turmoil in that clubhouse that I'm not aware of. Should we find that out? We'll talk about it. But for right now, from what we are seeing, there are little things to justify firing a manager in his 2nd year ever as a manager. One the season's done just because the team, headlined by poor roster construction that David Stearns started. Oh, Meny's going to be the one to bite the bullet? If that happens, I really think that's more of David Stearns trying to save face for his own ass than it is anything else, because that is David's guy. Which means, how does this work when a president hires guys and signs guys? He is going to give them more benefit of the doubt than someone else that maybe didn't bring them in. Which is why we go back to, why was Drew Gilbert traded at the deadline for Tyler Rogers, Jose Budo, and Blake Tidwell? It's because he didn't have a say in Gilbert. One, he didn't have the personal attachment to Gilbert, the way that maybe an Epler would have a little bit more after trading for him from the Astros in 2023 in the deadline, right? The same way how the Mets will give more opportunity to a Carson Bench as their center field option next year, not just because he's their best top option for an outfielder and center of a prospect, but it's because that's David Stearns' guy. That was David Stearns' first round pick in his first year as Mets Pobo. Those things matter. They want them to marinate before they are too rash in their decision making. If Steve Cohen acted on everything the fans say, they would never get anywhere as an organization. There needs to be a happy medium, and that means biting the bullet even at times that we're not happy with. So yes, does every fan of their mother have a rightful reason? Does every fan and their mother have a rightful reason to be pissed off if you don't make playoffs and Mendy's the manager next year? Sure. Yeah, I can see why maybe that's sour for you a little bit. But my counter is everything that I just told you there. There is no team in baseball history, for the most part, that finds continued success while having this constant carousel of different managers every other year. It doesn't happen. And what does that tell you from the outsider point of view? If you're someone that's trying to be considered for the managerial role, why in God's name would you want to come to the Mets? After 5 years under Steve Cohen of all the turmoil and 3 different managers, why would you want to come here when you know your ass can be grass in 2 seconds when it comes to going from being comfortable to being on the hot seat? Because a lot of people hate the idea of even coming in and being a part of this organization because of the media. They hate the idea because of the fans. Now you mean to tell me that they have an even greater idea as to why they should hate it from front office, Steve Cohen, David Stearns down, because there isn't instilled confidence that they'll be here beyond a year? That is never going to work. That's what I'm trying to relay. Please know that. It's not me to defend all Mendy's wrongs, because Mendy has been terrible in a lot of ways this year with his managing. Not every time, but there have been many things that he has not been good at. Having said that, we can also say at the same time, it's probably not in this team's best interest to move forward with a Carlos Mendoza-less Mets. It's probably in their best interest to still have him, even with all the trials and tribulations we've seen in year 2 with him. Thank you for the donate. And this is not a Carlos Mendoza burner. This is common sense. Because when you guys sit here and say, Wardy, we're at the end of the 2026 season. We have a new manager and we still have all the same problems. What happened? Yeah, because it goes beyond the manager. Hey. Lewis of the $2 Hollow, thank you so much. Unfortunately, Fanson 68, I'm used to it. Exactly. And the only thing that I made a great, the only thing I can say about myself in comparison to when I started this channel, because I was such a big optimist, obviously, when we started, I still am. I'm just very disappointed in this team on a nightly basis. There's one thing that I should have listened to more fans more. I have no problem apologizing and saying my wrongs. I was really on my high horse my first 2 years of covering the Mets on believing, on being positive, on knowing it's a new ownership, it's a new change, and we're taking steps in the right direction. And while I do believe all that to still be true, the Mets are absolutely taking great steps in the right direction. Strides in the right direction. Our farm is night and day. The Mets have literally one of the best farms in baseball right now. They have done so good from St. Lucie all the way up in developing their young talent. I'm so excited about the future with the guys that we've drafted, that we signed out of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, the Colombian players, what have you. I'm really excited about all that. But even with my excitement, I can say the same thing that every Mets fan has went through, especially the ones who obviously have been through fandom of at least 20, 30, 40 years. And that is that the losing numbs you. And after a while, you not only expect it, but it really helps regulate your emotions. And that's something naturally that as I continue to get older, that'll be the case. You haven't seen enough. You don't stay in a sinking ship. Same logic why we stayed too long with Adam Gase. Yeah, no, Kev, here's the thing though, Kev. Putting Adam Gase in the same breath of Carlos Mendoza is nothing short of disgusting. Adam Gase is a shell of Carlos Mendoza as a coach. You should never have them even in the same consideration. I hope that's not what you meant by that, but I'm going to stand on that. Mendoza lacks composure, makes too many bad decisions in games. I'm not disagreeing with you this season. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying you're wrong. But what you guys need to understand is that organizationally, It has almost never happened in Major League Baseball history that a team has found continued success by firing guys every other year. It just doesn't work that way. Jets fans, I know you love Aaron Glenn. I know he's not at fault for everything, but you're 0-3. You really going to go on a high horse on how he's the future, on how he's the right hire? He might be down the road for you, but he is not that yet. And I know that goes in hand with the roster. I know that goes in hand with Justin Fields and his concussion. I know that goes in hand with everything. I get the context there. But the point still stands. It doesn't come down to just the manager. There's so much more that goes in hand with it. And it's really, really difficult to see a world where the Mets fire Mendoza at the end of this offseason. And then, let's see, Mendoza's shit, Wardy argument is shit. Paul, it's okay. You just can't comprehend the idea that maybe baseball organizations don't run the way that you want them to. And that's okay. You guys can continue to talk shit on me and Mendy all you want. That's fine. But I'm telling you, when he's here back as manager next year, these will be the reasons why. You can have the earplugs in all you want. You can listen. You can decide to not agree with me and not listen. That's fine. But you're setting yourself up for failure, because this is what more than likely the reality is going to be as someone who's been following along with them and understanding how they operate. Okay? So that's fine. You do you, I'll do me. But when Mendy is back here next season, and should the Mets have more success, don't be that same schmuck fan to say, oh, I never said a bad thing about Carlos Mendoza. No, you're a hypocrite. I've said plenty shit about Mendy. The next time I see Mendy in person, because I saw him earlier this year, and he knows very well who I was, the first thing he said to me was, you're Wardy, right? I kid you not, as I asked him a question in a presser at Amazing Day. First thing I'll say to him is, my apologies for going in on you, maybe as hard as I did this past year. Some things I felt were warranted, but I'm just an emotional fan that wants to see my team win, and I know that you know that. And he knows that as well, just like anyone else that actually understands how this works from the fan to the coach to the front office point of view. JT with the $10 holla. JT, thank you so much. I appreciate that. He says, Wardy, I live near Charlotte and pull for the Panthers. Ooh, this is good comp. The coaching changes over the last 5 years has reflected the play on the field. No consistency. I agree we need to keep Mendy another year. That's what I'm trying to say. This is exactly what I'm trying to say. It's not about what Mendoza's doing right, because we know he's not doing a whole lot right this year. It's the fact of, how do you expect this team to realistically be better next season and in the years moving forward with their fourth manager in a 6-year span, and they keep all of this core group together? And I know it will not all be together. So maybe the rightful counter is, and maybe this is where I can eat crow on, and that's fine. And I will say this. You guys know this very well. The Mets break up the core so significantly this offseason that the importance of Mendoza being here is lacking, because there aren't a lot of guys that are running it back with us. Then that's a little bit of a different discussion. And that is where I will have more leeway in what I'm saying here. If that is not the case, however, I'm going back to my initial points. Wardy, us Jets fans are just happy that Rodgers is done running the Jets organization. My guy, Aaron wasn't running the organization. As a Jets fan, I don't know why you don't know that. You have an idiot owner that made every wrong decision last year. He allowed a 40-year-old quarterback coming off of a complete tear, out for an entire season with injury, dictate what everything says goes. That's on ownership down. Ownership is the reason why the Jets have been as incompetent as they have been all these years. It isn't on Aaron Rodgers. You could say that you're happy Aaron's gone, but the reality is you would have more success this season with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback than anything you're likely going to get with Justin Fields this year. And I don't see that as a slight adjustment. It's a fact. It's the reason why the Steelers are going to have another winning season and why the Jets are likely going to have a losing season. There's difference. And you want to know a key factor behind the Steelers' success as well, and this is a perfect pairing here. And I am not someone who defends Mike Tomlin often. If I'm being honest, I'm looking forward to when the Steelers no longer have Mike Tomlin, because the Steelers, for us as Steelers fans, we're used to success of championships, like how the Yankee way would be for those Yankee fans, right? So when you just make playoffs and are bounced, that's inexcusable. That's not good enough for Steelers fans, for ones like myself. And for the past 10 plus years, Mike Tomlin has kept the Steelers above 500, the only coach in NFL history to do such a thing over that stretch. But he also has never gotten us over the hump since 2008, 2009 against the Cardinals on a team that was completely built on Cowher, the previous head coach of the Steelers then. And the reason why I bring that up is because the one thing I can say about Mike Tomlin on the good front is that the consistent winning is a philosophy that's been built year after year after year of having that same coach, right? The Steelers would not have had their consistent winning seasons if it wasn't for Mike Tomlin keeping them afloat. Where I fault Tomlin is in the playoff aspect of things and in-game decisions. I do not like Tomlin's philosophies at all. There's a lot of things I don't like about him, as a matter of fact, but I'm not going to go on that tangent right now because we're here to talk about the Mets. Going back to what you were saying, though, Nick, we knew we'd be bad this season and that Glenn probably isn't a championship hire. Answering that, that's okay. That completely hear you on, and that's fine. And I will retract maybe what I was saying a little bit earlier on, the expectations for Glenn and thinking that's going to be greater. As long as you know what the expectation with Aaron Glenn is this year as a Jets fan, then okay, then we're cool there. I hear you completely loud and clear. And I understand Jets fans are happy that Rodgers is gone. I'm just telling you, Aaron is still going to be a better option for you this season, more than likely, than Justin. And we're talking future long-term. Justin Fields obviously has a higher ceiling. He has elite legs. He honestly has all the makings of being, a light Lamar Jackson. But we've been saying that since he's been drafted is also the counter as well. When is it going to finally come together? Will it happen with the Jets in the next couple of seasons? I hope for their case it does, but we'll have to see to believe it. JT, thank you again for that donation earlier. I appreciate that. And I can't believe that we managed to get someone like myself on this high horse acting like I'm this Carlos Mendoza truther that wants Manny to stay a manager. That isn't the case. That isn't the case. I've been calling out Mendoza's nonsense all year long, like you guys. I'm just trying to help you understand how these things run and why it probably is not in the organization's best interest to constantly cut ties with guys every other year. That's not how you build sustainability, nor is that how you build consistency. You want to know how we've talked about the Mets having no consistency whatsoever? The only consistency that they've had this season, as a matter of fact, has been inconsistent. That'll obviously continue with the way that we've been going this year. But in that same light, the Mets need some type of semblance of consistency in the organization to move forward. If they don't, then things are only going to continue to get worse. They will. And that's why I'm damn curious, for right or wrong reasons, to see what is going to happen a week from now should the Mets not make playoffs. I'm going to go back to my graphic one more time to see if it updated. If it didn't, it's okay. Yeah, it still hasn't. The Cincinnati Reds have that wild card spot now. You guys know the gist. They have the tiebreaker on the Mets, so that's that. That's where we are. Do you honestly think any free agent will come to the Mets if they do I think any free agent will come to the Mets if they want to reign, if they win? Okay. I'm going to assume you meant to say, do you think any free agent will come to the Mets at this point? And my answer to that is, of course. Of course. The Mets are always going to be reeling in top guys. And they were able to do that when they had no track record of success. They most certainly are going to do it after having some levels of success for the past couple of years. It hasn't been consistent, nor has it been great, but they have had night and day difference from what they had for the majority of Wilpons, going back to as soon as Bernie Madoff and that entire situation blew up for the Wilpons and they lost their millions of dollars, they were never the same as owners. And we all know that. We all saw it. They penny pinched. They didn't spend the dollars that you otherwise want to see them go ahead and do. I only brought it up as a comp that we expected the Mets to be great versus the Jets to be bad. I got you. And the comparison of expectations to reality is why we are all pissed about them. Absolutely. Expectations. Emphasize that word right there. Expectation. That is what the Mets have not hit home on all season long. Not hitting on expectations. And that is the exact thing that I said verbatim to every single one of you guys heading into this season. How will this team handle expectations? And the answer to that is terribly. This is another year where they have no effing clue how to handle things once they have a sliver of success. A sliver. We're not even talking about anything that's drastic. Kevin, if you want to get bounced in the chat, just let me know. Because if you're going to be an asshole Yankees fan, which I know is common for folks like yourself, the least you could do is maybe break up your text in the chat instead of being a little pain in the ass the way that you are right now, commenting constantly. Go ahead and continue to do it. I promise you're going to be bounced in 2 seconds should you continue to spam. Like what? You can talk shit all you want, but don't be annoying. Now you're just being annoying. You don't need the intention. Oh, you want it? All right. You're getting it. You're bounced. Fucking idiots. Actually idiots. Actually idiots. Can't make this shit up. Oh my God. That's what I mean. You think we don't know that the Mets play like shit right now? You think Mets fans aren't well aware on their status? What? Really? You're on your high horse as a Yankees fan when we all know damn well you're still going to end not winning the World Series this year. If you do, I'll gladly retract. But until then, ain't going to happen. Can you time me out, Pat? No. It's because you want it, you sick. You're sick. You're a sick bastard. You know what I'm going to say. You're a sicko. Mets, $5 holla. Thank you so much. No more Manaea on the mound. I'm sick of the two-pitch pony throwing nothing but sweepers and four-seamers. Diversify the pitches. I respect that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, you know what, Kevin? Listen, Kevin, stop saying this shit at least. That's fair. All right, Kevin, stop. He's good. He's good. Listen, I don't care. I can care less if you want to talk smack as an opposing fan. Truthfully, all I care about is just don't be annoying. Like, you got one job in the chat, and that is to be in the flow of everyone else. If you can't abide by that, then there's no reason for you to be here. Tangos with a $5 holla. There's something else wrong because spending money ain't working either. Because you need a balance. You can't just spend money and think you're going to get all the success here. All right, Kevin. Kevin, now if I'm being transparent, I'm just bouncing you because I don't want to see your face anymore. It's nothing personal. I don't feel like looking at you anymore. That's it. Nothing personal, Kevin. Bye-bye. Thank you for the viewership. I appreciate it. I think that's a good way to wrap it up. Have some decorum. Thank you. Exactly. Have some class. You're going to talk shit. At least be sporadic. Say it every 5 minutes, not 10 times in a effing 20-second span. My God. I almost said something really bad a second ago, too. I'm glad I bit my tongue on it because you're getting Wardy unhinged right now here. Ay, Dios mío. All right. Yeah, to answer on the spending, it's a balance. You need more than just spending to have success. And that goes back to my initial point earlier. You need to have a built philosophy of something that lasts multiple years on end. It can't just be something where you snap. Oh, I didn't like it after 1 year. Let's go ahead and cut everything, because you're going to have a lot of those issues where there isn't sustainability to have success. Now, I understand the rightful counter is, Wardy, where the hell is the sustained success this year? You're 100% right. It's nowhere to be seen. But having said that, you still do not want to have too much organizational change too often, because it never works. It just doesn't work that way. Greg with the $10 holla. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. I know we've had a lot of critical games, but after that double steal yesterday, I was anticipating a big win. The Nemo K killed that. Oh, it did. Yesterday really felt like we were getting the aura. Yesterday really felt like we were going to F around and get our first actual full comeback victory in the ninth inning. Yesterday felt like we were finally getting that moment for the first time this season. Yet they showed us exactly why they are not them. Thank you for the donation, Greg. I appreciate that. And thank you to everybody that's taking the time to watch this live in a replay. I really do appreciate it. Thank you guys kindly. Before I get out of here, I got one final thing I'll say. I'll relay it all to you guys. It's twofold. It's one, the pitching. Manaea, 1 out of 10. Bullpen, fantastic bullpen today. 9 out of 10 for the bullpen. Gorgeous bullpen. Great job, bullpen. Offense today, collectively, my grade for the offense today, you're getting a 2 out of 10 today. Why? Because you put up 2 runs on the sorry Washington Nationals. You're pond scum today is what you were, the New York Mets, in your offense. And I say this as someone who loves majority of the guys. I'm looking at this list right now, but they played like shit. What's your opinion on a double starter? See, I like piggybacking. I have no qualms with piggybacking. You just opened up a can of worms, Jonathan. You just opened up a can of effing worms. Because it's a good question. This is my point. I have been advocating for this for 2.5 months, if not 3 now. I'm piggybacking because the Mets get no effing length from their starters that aren't their rookies. I've been saying this for so long before the rookies were even here. I'm all for piggybacking. This is what the Mets will do in postseason play should they be there. It makes endless sense to piggyback when you have a bunch of starters that can't give you length but might be good in a 3-inning sample size. The problem that I have today is you finally had success with the piggybacking a week ago, and Carlos Mendoza, who I spent the past half hour defending, now I need to talk shit on again, couldn't even get it right today. All he had to do was flip-flop him. And I'm not saying that Clay Holmes would have put up 4 shutty today, but we're never going to know now. We're never going to know. And what we do know is what we saw last week was Holmes and Manaea getting the job done. Then what we saw in the first half this year. Buddy, you think I don't know that the Mets suck? I've been saying the Mets have sucked every day for north of the past 3 months. AL, You're new here. That's okay. It just means you're incompetent, and that's fine. Let me enlighten you. As someone who literally covers them for a living, I know exactly every in and out of this baseball team right now. That's why I'm pissed off, because I see the same shit on the wall like you do every single time, and somehow, some way, expecting different. But where I expected different, and this goes back to yesterday, when I looked at the starting lineup for the Mets today, I said to myself, is Sean Manaea really starting after being piggybacked last week? What is the point? What is the point of throwing him in a one-and-done piggyback just to throw his ass out there and be batting practice again as a starter? It doesn't matter if it's the Washington Nationals. It doesn't matter if it's the Chicago White Sox. It doesn't matter if it's the LA Dodgers. Good, bad, ugly, and different. You're going to get the same shit from Sean every year, yet it took another bad start to get that around Carlos Mendoza's brain. 2 months of pitching like dog shit as a starter. Yet, let's go ahead and throw him out there. One of our biggest games of the year. All right. Heard that neck crack? That was nice. First time I had relief today from all the stress that this Mets team gives me. That's it. I'm out of here. We will be here tomorrow. We have a big video dropping tomorrow. Make sure you do not miss it. We're going to talk about a lot. We got a lot to get into. Do not miss tomorrow's video. Tuesday, the Mets play this thing we call baseball. It's in Chicago against the Cubs. Lock in, 3-game set. Then you got a 3-game set in Miami. How many games do you guys think the Mets realistically need to win down the stretch in order to make postseason? I think at minimum they have to win 4 of their next 6 games. At minimum, they have to make 4 in the next 6 games. I don't think 3-3 will be enough. I really don't. If the Reds continue to be on this heater, you got to win at least 4. I say F it and just win the next 6. Of course, Jonathan, I got you. I say F it and win the next 6 for sure. But they're not going to. Have the Mets won 6 straight games this year? I don't think they've done that since May. But yeah, they'll do it. They'll do it with a 10-game below 500 road record in the final week of baseball. Yeah, surely they'll go ahead and do that. Yeah. All right, bud. If they do it, great. Hope to see you there. Until then, I'll see you tomorrow for Mets coverage. I will see you Tuesday for Mets game coverage. I will see you Wednesday for Mets game coverage and the rest of the week. Now, when the offseason is here, if they're not in playoffs, we'll be here to break it all down every step of the way. What went wrong this year, even though you all know by now, what they need to do different. Should they fire Mendoza, the pros and the cons with it, like what we talked about today, and everything else in between. Thank you guys again for watching. I love you all to death. I appreciate these vent sessions. I really do. Juliet says it could have worked out where Manaea piggybacked second and still have given up 3 or more runs. Absolutely, Juliet. But here's the thing. We're never going to know. So what do we have to react to? What we know, what we saw. And what we saw was a decision that I was not in favor of from the start of the game. It blew up in our face. And an offense that rolled over and died like they have done countless times in day game series finales on a Sunday. Thank you guys again. I love you all to death. I really do. This has been a fun one. All things considered. And as always, no matter what, everybody, no matter what, let's go Mets. Peace out, guys. Have a good one. Enjoy your day. Please enjoy your evening. Ignore the Mets. Try to do something. Go on a walk. Go on a hike. Go swimming if you're in a warm climate. Do something. Enjoy your family, friends, loved ones. Get away from the stress because that's